Hey folks, welcome to week 10 of DMD400 audio and video for the web. Alright, so I'm already in the week 10 module here, so let's go over what we're talking about this week. It is an After Effects week, and we are specifically focusing on what is referred to in After Effects as 2.5D. So of course, this is referring to, it's kind of a play on words for 3D or three-dimensional. So just to remind you, of course, in design space, we have three axes that we work with. The x-axis, which is horizontal, the y-axis, which is vertical, and the z-axis, which refers to three-dimensional space. Now, of course, we've used this in other programs like Adobe Illustrator. We use it in web design. The layers palette in Photoshop replicates using the z-axis. But in programs like Adobe After Effects, you can actually work in more of a three-dimensional environment. So there are two things to look at. One is pretty timely and one is pretty classic with Adobe After Effects. The two videos that you're going to consume this week, the two training videos here, this one here is what is 2.5D and this one is more 2.5D. So 2.5D is a workspace within Adobe After Effects that allows you to treat elements in a slightly three-dimensional manner. Now this is different than sort of 3D wireframing or animation software. We're not doing the same thing you would do in a program like 3D Studio Max or Maya. We're not making actual three-dimensional objects. However, we can take two-dimensional objects and treat them in a three-dimensional way, almost as if you could take those layers from Photoshop and physically bring them out into space right off of your computer screen, which would be kind of trippy, right? So it gives you a chance to work in a more three-dimensional space, which, if you think about it from an After Effects point of view, from a motion graphics point of view, really gives you some extra power in terms of how are you handling those elements that are on your screen, right? You're not just moving them to the front or moving them to the back or rearranging their order in the layers palette, which we do, which we're used to doing in the Adobe products, but this gives you a chance to treat them a little more three-dimensionally in space. Now, the other thing we can look at is that just recently, the newest version of Adobe After Effects, which you may or may not have upgraded to yet, Adobe After Effects 21, has introduced this new 3D design space, which, as you can see here in the demonstration video, takes that idea of the 2.5D design space and really pushes it into a much more interactive space. You can see here that these sort of two-dimensional vector elements that are being shown here, once you turn on that 3D space, allows you to pull them out into that three-dimensional space and then manipulate them by moving them around those three axes. So anyway, check out those videos, and in class we're going to play around with this new 3D design space and see what it affords us in terms of motion graphics functionality and just making our stuff more interesting. Okay, now meanwhile, outside of practicing with Adobe After Effects and sort of getting into the 3D space in After Effects a little bit, or I should also say the 2.5D space, right? We're also working on our third motion graphics project, which is Project 3. So due at the end of this week is Step 1. Now, if you recall from last time around, this is a bookend assignment, meaning that this is the exact same project that I use in DMD100, but here we are in DMD400 revisiting it. And the reason we're revisiting it is because now, 2-3 years later, you have many more design skills, and of course you are now learning Adobe After Effects, which is where title sequences in real life are created. So now you have an opportunity to not just make a sort of simplistic introductory title sequence, but you can make a much more professional looking one based on what you're learning now. However, even though I rewrote some of this assignment for this class, the steps are exactly the same as they were for the first one. So step 1 is due at the end of this week, which is to reimagine a classic movie or television show. So just like in the first time around that you've seen this, you're going to pick one of these classic TV shows or one of these classic movies, and you are going to rewrite it as a one-page plot summary into a brand new genre and subgenre. So the original genre and subgenre you can see right here. So The Fugitive, for example, was originally an action-adventure movie. Maybe you want to turn that into a romantic comedy. So you're going to go through the process of reimagining it. So of course, remember to go through the steps. Be sure to understand the variety of genres and subgenres that are available to you. Either read the plot synopsis for each of these, or go out and watch them. I would prefer you go watch them if you can get your hands on them on Netflix or YouTube or somewhere. I would rather you watch whichever ones you are interested in, and then decide which one you would like to reimagine. Now, if you did this assignment with me back in DMD400 and you want to tackle the exact same TV show or movie you did last time, that is fine with me. If you want to tackle a different one, that's good too. It's entirely up to you how you want to approach this. But anyway, step 1 is due at the end of this week. It is the 1-page write-up of your brand new, newly imagined plot summary. So a little bit of creative writing to start out this process. Then for homework, you're going to dive into step 2. Step 2 is to create a research collection and presentation, which is to basically go out and collect all of the content that you are going to use for building your title sequence. There is a little bit of a discussion and some demonstrations on what title sequences are. You should be familiar with them by now, but if you're not, or if you'd just like to brush up on them, certainly check out these links and look at some examples, as well as this great video, how to make your own title sequence and the theory behind them. So check that out. But then the main thing you're going to be doing for homework for step 2, which is not due until next week, of course, is to go ahead and start collecting all of the photographs, imagery, video clips, graphics, color palettes, typography, music, sounds, etc., that you think you will use in your title sequence. And again, this is not the final collection. These are just, you are just searching for inspiration here, right? You are just going to dig on through and collect stuff that works for you, okay? So that is step 2, and then step 2 continued moves in to the next page where you're going to build that into a mood board presentation. But anyway, more about that next week. But since you're already familiar with this assignment, I kind of want to just zip ahead with it a little bit, because you should be able to move through these first 2 steps of this presentation pretty quickly because you are familiar with them already, okay? All right, so that's it for this week. Definitely make some time to play around with Adobe After Effects and explore this 2.5D working space, as well as the brand newly released 3D design space. And when next we get together, we'll play around with this some more and really see what we can do with this 3D area. All right, you guys have a good day. If you need any help, you can email me or catch up with me on weekly office hours on Zoom, and I will see you soon.